Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this MasterControl webinar where we are really excited to talk about the topic of artificial intelligence, specifically around generative AI tools that we've built to assist our life sciences users. So let's jump right in. Thank you again for joining us. So I'm Nicole Sherman with MasterControl on our product marketing team, and I'm joined here by Renee VonBergen, who is our AI machine learning expert on our product team here at MasterControl, and she will be the one taking you through this session today. So let's go quickly through an agenda to just see where we're headed, and then we'll pass it over to Renee to get started. So first, what we'll cover is our development approach to AI at MasterControl, kind of those considerations, security in place for our users. Then we'll look at the tools we have available today. We'll give you an overview and also a demo of those tools. And then finally, a look at what's ahead on our roadmap. So we will have a couple of opportunities for Q&A. So I encourage you, as something comes to mind, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section of the webinar, and we'll be monitoring those, and hopefully we can get to as many as we can during those Q&A portions of the session. If you do have any technical issues, feel free to shoot us a message in the chat, but I just want to reiterate, please use that Q&A button for any of those questions that you have for Renee. So with that, I'll pass it over to her. Thanks, Renee.
All right, thank you. Well, let's get started. We're going to first start talking about the development of assistive AI, is what we call it. Obviously, AI is artificial intelligence, but we see it as assistive intelligence because it does not replace a human. Instead, it's helping that human, as in helping you. Some of this will appear a little bit technical, but I want to go through it at a high level. Because we get sometimes questions from your legal folks or your InfoSec folks or your IT departments, et cetera. And so this will help you give you a little idea about what we do. So I started talking about this, right? Artificial intelligence is something that mimics human intelligence. It makes it possible through computer vision, for instance, to augment vision, help you detect anomalies, for instance, between two images or something like that. As you well know, it's through generative AI, you're able to create document drafts or translate documents, anything that's basically generating some form of, we'll call it communication. Typically it's text, but it can be images or tables or in fact, videos, et cetera. So if you're familiar with things going on out in the market right now, ChatGPT, for instance, is good at generating text. DALL-E, also available there, right, generates images, etc. So some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with some of these concepts. And then you can also use artificial intelligence to be able to see patterns or trends and then make predictions from there. You can retrieve information, not just in a traditional search way, where you have to know a keyword or something like that that matches, but artificial intelligence makes it possible to find synonyms, for instance. So that's helpful. And then, of course, getting recommendations for decision making. The recommendation part of that is really important because AI, at least at this stage and for the foreseeable future, should not be making really important decisions itself. We always want to have a person reviewing those decisions. And this is what we call human in the loop. This is an industry term. You might see it abbreviated sometimes as HITL. Essentially, it means exactly what I said, right? Just let's keep the human reviewer, the expert, in the loop of what we're doing here. So I've taken an example of something that happens within our product called Exam Generator. You'll first at the top there in magenta, you'll provide the training material. So you'll upload a document and say, these are the sections or that I think are important. And you can essentially, by highlighting those sections, you're directing the exam generation, and you're also giving the exam generator an idea of what's important in the document on relative weights, for example. Then we use an agentic platform. That's also a term you'll hear widely in the industry. We do use that methodology as well. An agent basically is a piece of code that has a specialized task. And so there's a boss agent, and a boss agent might say to an agent that is good at generating questions and answers, hey, give me a question based on the material that was just highlighted. And then in our case, exam generator is a multiple choice generator. And so the agent would also have to provide a correct answer and 3 distractor answers or wrong answers. Then we do some post-processing, which is to check for relevance. So infamously in our beta for exam generator, there was an exam question that said, what is the capital of France? And of course, they did have the correct answer of Paris, but that's highly irrelevant for the material that we were testing against. So we have post-processing that checks both for relevance, for truthfulness, et cetera, as well as other guardrails. From there, we then display those questions and answers to you. And again, as a human coming into the loop, you can edit if you'd like to. You can completely regenerate a question, or if you think that something is not weighted heavily enough, you can weight it by asking another question out of that particular section. We take over from there and save that exam securely. All of our everything that we have from the models themselves to your data, of course, and the processing that happens in between. All of that is saved securely, governed by MasterControl. And then it's up to you then to approve, get any reviews that you want on that material, and then import it into your training. So all of that is to say that, you know, there are things that the machine is really good at, but it's not good at all without a human oversight. And that helps with risk mitigation. So that's an important factor relative to risk mitigation. I've spoken of agents. You don't worry about this particular kind of dumbed down version, but we don't even need to pay attention to some of the parts about databases, et cetera. Essentially, you're coming in as a display here and say, hey, I want to generate an exam, for instance. And so here's this boss agent that I spoke of that says, okay, great, we're going to need a couple things. In this case, we'll need question and answer sets, and that might be a loop that it goes through several times. You might have another case, as our tools offer, with document translation. So instead there, it'll come through and say, hey, I just need a translation in this language. And so only this translation agent is going to be used. And similarly, we have a summarization agent as well. So these pretty much go along the lines of highlighting here the agents that we use to have a successful task accomplished within our tools. There are many other agents that we have, and some of them are actually reused for other purposes. Let me jump into something quickly here. In the case of exam generation, actually, we found that it wasn't as the relevance scores and the truthfulness scores can be helped by splitting the question and answer tasks into 2 different agents. So some of those have to obviously happen in order. The boss agent here will say, hey, I need a question generated. And then once that question is generated, it goes back to the boss who says, hey, okay, answer guys, based on the question that was just generated, give me an answer here. And again, what do you care about this part, right? You just want to know what am I doing, you know, from the question generation piece. I don't really care how it's going on in the background. Your IT departments may be interested in knowing that that we definitely are on the forefront of development here from an AI perspective, where we are using what's called an agentic platform. Similarly, these agents might be reused for different tasks. So for instance, I've been highlighting this generate a question. to give you an exam question. But you know how in chat at the end it might say, hey, do you want me to answer a question about this or that? That question or suggestion is generated in our case by the same question agent. You might be going, I'm not familiar with any chat that MasterControl has. You will see it coming up later in this presentation because it currently is under development. If you were at Summit, you saw an early proof of concept of some of the things that we were doing. And so we're happy to be sharing more of that with you today. All right. Last here, one question that we get a lot, there's a bit of confusion about LLMs and what they're trained on. So if ever you hear like, is your LLM trained on customer data, for instance? That's a question we get a lot. The answer is no. Okay, well then what's happening here? We're always selecting from a set of open source LLMs. LLM stands for large language model. Sometimes you'll just hear model or LLM. And basically that's the large bit in a generative AI methodology where that's the piece that's going to generate text. And it's basically a prediction of patterns. So there in the open source community, there are many LLMs to choose from based on the tasks that we have at hand. For instance, translating something, we pick from that field some of the LLMs that we think are going to do well based on a variety of measurements that are published. So we end up with a handful of LLMs there, and then we test on public data sets. These also are under, so both the LLM itself and the test data that we use is under an Apache 2 or MIT license. Why is that important? Because it essentially allows us then to make some tweaks and then own it ourselves, as opposed to being beholden to another LLM provider, such as Meta with Llama, for instance, or something like that, right? So this gives us control of the data as well as the LLM. We do a lot of research from there. I won't get into exactly what we do. At the point where we decide we've got a winner, in the case of like for this task, we're going to use this one or two different models, then we call the finalization of that locking the weights of it. That's really important as far as like that tells you that you own now the LLM. So all of that piece is hosted by MasterControl. Therefore, we not only then own that model, but because we're hosting it, any data that's going to it is completely within the MasterControl security realm. It's not going out to a third party at that point. All right, so let's take off our technical hats here and talk about the available tools today. We have three that we'll be going through. Exam Generator is the first. Basically, as I've alluded to throughout this presentation so far, it assists in the creation of creating exams. So we have ourselves included, started out with just read and understood, right? Here's some text, read it, and then understand what's going on there. And that doesn't necessarily assure you that your workforce is even comprehending the information, let alone, able to actually tell you about it in a form that says, I've actually learned this. So creating an exam helps with that. Again, you saw in that human in the loop model that you can review, edit, and save those exams for export or rather import actually into the training module. We'll go through some of that in a demo a little bit later. All right. This is an example of what we've done in Exam Gen. This is some of the text that we said was important to test on. And then here's an example of the question that was generated. I actually have three questions that I generated from this. And in that sense, I've got, okay, I can accept this question. I like the answers, or I can go, nope, I don't like it at all. And I can regenerate the question in its entirety. Or I can say, you know what, we don't use this term. We just use the acronym KBA. And so therefore you might want to change just that question or something like that. So that's an example of exam generation. The second tool that we have available is straightforward document translator. It essentially takes documents, up to 5 documents at a time, in multiple languages. You don't have to specify what language they are. We can suss that out right away. And you can translate into multiple languages. We launched with 16 languages. We currently have 19 languages, and we have 2 more that are in process of coming online right now. Essentially here, this means that you've got, if you have a global workforce, or in fact, even in some countries, you might have several languages spoken on an informal basis, your workforce may be much more comfortable in their own native language than in your, let's say, corporate language. And so this allows you to translate into those languages. Here are the languages that we currently have. And we will, let's see, just by way of note, things like Dutch and Hebrew, for instance, were added during our beta program. So if you are participating in programs like that, you immediately can get some good features in that might otherwise take a little while. Tagalog was another one that was added, I think, at the request of someone that came along right after that time. Lithuanian, I think, was also a beta one. And then we'll soon be adding Hungarian, and Chinese up here is in Mandarin right now. We'll split that out and offer Cantonese as well. So here, you are going to select the language into which you want to translate your document, and you can upload up to 5 documents at a time. Coming soon, actually around the May timeframe, you'll be able to not just select one language, but select up to 5 languages. And the reason for that is, right, you don't want to just necessarily sit there one after another when you know, for instance, you need to translate into German and French, for instance. Maybe you have an English document in Europe. All right, and the last of the 3 is Document Summarizer. We have 2 things that are happening here. And let me just jump to this next one to illustrate this. The first thing is a change summary, and this is where you can upload 2 documents, one being a revision of the other, and say, okay, tell me what changed. So down here in the summary that's generated, you'll see, for instance, that we remove some text, and it tells you what text was removed. And it also gives you a summary of what all the changes were. The other thing that you can do is provide a summary for a single document. And this process actually gives you a summary, a description, and keywords for the document. And all of those things are helpful in basically finding the document and making sure you have the right one once a file name of the document, for instance, is identified. So the difference between a summary and a description, you can think of it this way. I get this question a lot. What's the difference? Ironically, right, in a kind of a change, tell me the difference here. A summary is, you can think of it as cliff notes from when you were in school, for instance, where, you know what, I don't have time to read all that. Just give me the punchline here. Versus, so it's a concise trim down of the important points that would be in a document, for example, versus the description kind of takes a third-party approach and says, well, the document covers things like this and that. So it doesn't give you it's not an executive summary of sorts, for example. And the keywords, of course, are the words and phrases that are most typically found in the document. You can add keywords shown down here. You can remove them. You can edit any of these things here, and we'll see some of that in the demo. All right. we'll actually, I'll go ahead and do it. If you saw a little flash on my face, I was going to ask Nicole to do it, but let's not call her back for one slide. Let's go through this. Essentially, you are qualified to use any of these three products if you are QX Base, Standard, or Complete. And you must be on cloud quarterly. You also, of course, can be on monthly. The idea here is that you can't be on-prem, for instance. You can't just be on an annual release. Otherwise, you are free to use these products and for free. Do we have anything, Nicole?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions, so we'll stop here, and I encourage you to continue to share your questions in the Q&A. So we'll cover a few here, then we'll go through some demoing, and then have time at the end for additional questions as well. So let's see. To start, how does MasterControl ensure that AI-generated exam questions are relevant and appropriate for regulatory compliance?
We have post-processing that I mentioned. One thing that we do that's just kind of a general thing that's important across the board. So there are two things to think about when we think about regulatory compliance. One is just straight up, is it factual, is it correct, et cetera. And the other is there something that's relative or important to the industry that we're in? In the first place, we do things where, for instance, we check for it's called named entities. How can I describe that? For relevance, for instance, let's say the capital of France is a good example of that. The way that we check for relevance there is to say, okay, France is deemed a correct answer. Let me see if the word France is mentioned at all in any of the text that was given to the generation agent. And if it's not there, then it doesn't matter if the answer is true or not. It's not relevant because it wasn't a named entity that was in that document. So that's one thing that we do for post-processing for accuracy, for instance, and relevance. Relative to the industry itself, for instance, we have the ability to say, so this would be in the case of either HIPAA or just PII, personally identifiable information in general. We do have a warning that can come up and say, hey, there is information here that you might want to double check, but we do leave it up to the human reviewer to decide because, for example, if you have an SOP that says, hey, if there's a fire at this lab station, there's two things that you need to do immediately. One is call 911, of course, and the next thing is to call Juan Lopez at extension 123. And it would be important to not redact, right, or not include Juan's name in this example because that's a relevant part of the SOP. So we do give you a warning in that respect, but we don't in this particular example, we don't prevent that PII from showing up because it's relevant.
Great. So another good example there of that human in the loop concept. Great. A couple other, I think, quick questions to answer on exam generator. So is it one section of a document equals one question, or is it possible to select multiple sections and only have one question on that selection?
Oh, yes, but you have to be a little bit tricky about this. Our UI is a little bit hard to understand here, but but I'll give you the trick and we're also improve that. So it is technically one question per one section, but you can kind of fake, you can select multiple sections to be into one section. The catch there is they have to be contiguous. So if I've got paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 and paragraph 3, I can click paragraph 1 and then hold shift and click paragraph 3, and that will now make paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 into a single selection. In that case, you'll have one question that's generated from those three. the catch there is that if you wanted one question from paragraph 1 and 3, you couldn't do that because they're not contiguous sections.
Great. And then continuing on Exam Generator, one other question on that tool. Does Exam Generator only create multiple choice? Are there other types of questions available or that will be available?
Yes, so right now, correct, it only does multiple choice, and that's specifically a correct answer in 3 distractor questions. The other format that we'll be supporting in the first half of this year, we think is the schedule, will be true false. We hear that a lot. If you have other types of formats that you'd like us to consider, certainly if you drop those in the chat, that would be great.
Great. Yeah, send on that feedback, right?
Mhm.
And then let's answer one more question and then move on to our live demo. So for Document Summarizer, does it recognize differences between a content change versus reordering content, i.e., same content, different order?
Yeah, that's a much tougher, as you I'm surmising you know that from the question itself. It does not recognize chunks of text as uh, as being just moved. It will call them out as this text was deleted and then this text later on was added, which you'll know is a move, but the summarizer itself does not know that.
Great. Yeah, that's a great question. All right, so we'll pause the Q&A there. Again, feel free to continue to pop those questions in as they come up as Renee goes through, but let's head over to our demo.
Let's see. It says I'm screen sharing and I don't have a visual cue for what I'm sharing here. Nicole, are you able to
Yep,
see the
we
sign
are
in here?
seeing your MasterControl login screen.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm signing in here. And I am going here to either Translator, Summarizer, or Exam Generator. We just had some Exam Generator questions, so let me jump into that quickly. Off my screen, I don't think you can see this, but I'm going to drag in a very short made-up SOP.
Renee, sorry to interrupt. Are you able to make that your browser a little bit bigger? It's probably only about 2/3 of your screen right now.
Sure.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
you could see my whole screen? Is that the deal?
yep. Now
Oh, okay.
the browser is your full screen. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me move some controls out of the way then so I can show you what I want to show you. All right, so this is the document that I've just uploaded, and I'm going to process that document, which means it's essentially breaking it down into chunks here. It does keep the different sections that I have, but you'll notice in this version it does strip the formatting, which doesn't really, the formatting itself is not relevant to the engine in this particular case. So to show you an example, for instance, I'm going to, I probably wouldn't select the history of this unless I was a Johnson & Johnson subsidiary or company itself. But we're going to say that for this purpose, we're going to select this one. And we definitely want to know the storage, right? How many bandages, adhesive bandages I should have in my storage supplies. And then if I wanted to, for instance, I could here, right? This one, removal is going to be obviously tongue in cheek, but it's going to be much too short to have a really good question. So maybe I can concatenate it with choosing this. I've clicked. I'm going to hold Shift and click the next one as well. And so I should have 1 question, 2 questions, and then together 3 questions. And in fact, it does anticipate generating 3 questions. So I'm going to do that. And it's going to generate, again, the question and then the correct answer and 3 distractors. And while it comes up here, there we go. It highlights, so for instance, here, the invention of the bandage, or Band-Aid in particular, you can have this. Now, this is sort of this is a silly example. I can here regenerate the question, that I didn't like it at all. Versus down here, 100 strips, yeah, these, great, I'm gonna go ahead and accept that, etc. So once I've done that, I save the exam and it goes into just a history of the exams that I've created. Two things here. I can either download the PDF, which then allows me to send that out to other people to review, for example, or I can download questions and answers. It downloads 2 files that are needed for import into QX training, which allows you to add this particular exam to a course, for example. And then one little secret over here hiding is these 3 dots, stack of three dots. If you don't want this in your list anymore, you can delete it. All right, let's go over to Translator. And this is pretty much a black box. There's not really anything interesting here to show. I'm going to drag in my same document and let's see, we'll put it into Dutch, sounds good. And we'll translate that. Again, I could have dragged in or selected up to 5 documents at once, and it puts it into, I see a state here, for instance, where it's queued. It will start translating soon, and then when it's translated, it shows here as successful. If it doesn't translate, you'll also get an indication of that so that you can go back and retranslate if necessary. Downloading for review, this will be the translation itself, and then you can send that out. The reason it says for review is that unlike Exam Generator, where you had a reasonable understanding of not only the language, but the which is English in this case, but also the types of questions that you said were important and that sort of thing, you're able to review right there in that loop on the screen. So you can say, yep, I like this, or I'm going to change this, or whatever. In the case here, you probably don't speak the language into which this was translated. And certainly if it's translated in multiple languages, you probably are not a polyglot, but you could be. But we assume you're not. And so you're going to download those for review and send them out. We allow you to upload this final translation here if you want to kind of keep a clean history of what's going on, so that you would know what your final translation was. I won't show you that. Well, let's see. Let's just look at it real fast. Think I need to drag it back. And so here, for instance, unlike Exam Generator, which tossed aside the formatting, we do retain the formatting in Translator. All right, we'll toss that aside and go to our last one, which is the summarizer. Come on there. And here you see, right, those 2 things that we had. If I want to just get the summary, I can do that. I'm gonna put in, I'm gonna drag 2 files into this side here because I want a summary of the differences and see what the changes were. In this case, right, I've got revision 14 and revision 15. So what's the difference between those 2? I'm going to say summarize. Here you see a list of either things that you've done that are related, right? Change summaries. I have several of those. Or in this case, I have a single document that I generated the summary, keywords, and description for. And so you can see the type here. Same thing. We've got status right now at summarizing. We do have the successful things as well. And this I'll call out to you. If there is, if we detect that the changes are more than 50% of the document, We don't even send that for processing. We say there's just too much to identify as far as what's changed. Like it's significant as far as the changes go. So we let you know that we did not summarize that, and here's the reason why. Again, I can download this, and I will do that and pull it up here. So you can essentially see, so in this example, it actually started out as a real SOP, but I wanted to add something that was very obviously added. And so I threw in 3 of my favorite movies into this. And so it identifies that as in the summary itself, and then tells me what I removed, what I added. And in this case, for instance, as I go through, this is in sequential order in the document. The last thing in my particular document was change summary itself, or revision history, I guess is a better term. And this, so I can see as I go down the document exactly what had changed. So those are our demos. And let me figure out if I can go back to the right slide here and get back into the right mode. Sorry about that. Everything changes sometimes when you're in Zoom. There we go. All right. See if I can jump ahead here. Nope. Sorry. You're going to see anyone who was late. Here's what you missed. Sorry about that. Close your eyes for a moment if I'm making you seasick here. All right. Let's look ahead at what we have coming up in the future. In 2025, so this year, we've got really 3 tracks of things that we're working on. First, we'll talk about our current products. So the 3 products that I just mentioned will have improvements such as true false, for example. We're also doing integration actually into QX itself. One of the things that we heard about Exam Generator, for instance, is that people really like the tool, but it is really a pain to have to upload something that's already in docs, for example, and then import it back into training. Like, why not just handle everything there within those QX modules, docs, and training? And so that's some integration that we'll be working on as well. And then we've got some other assistive technology that is infused into other products. That's the first track. The second track is we just call Chat With. The first thing that we'll be working on, which we did show as a proof of concept at Summit, is chat with regulations. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then chat with any type of your data, for instance, deviations being the first thing that we'll probably come out with there. It's in development right now. And then finally, some other add-on modules, and we'll jump into that as well. So 3 tracks that we'll cover. The first one, we touched on some of this in the Q&A that we just had. We'll do true false questions, and we'll also do multimodal, including images and video. So for instance, we in MasterControl itself, for instance, you can think of having help documents that are in text. But there's also, we have great Academy courses, which are, of course, a mix of text, images, and video. And so we'll be incorporating those types of things. We have had occasionally some requests for PowerPoint, for example. Not sure that we'll support that. Let us know in the comments. Now I sound like a YouTuber. Let us know if that's something that sounds interesting to you, but PowerPoint or not, right, some of these images and video would be something that we would want to support. Batch translations, that is translating in up to 5 languages, is in development. Like I said, it should be releasing right around the May timeframe, and we'll have more target languages coming on. And then finally, both actually for Exam Generator and Summarizer, those are English only right now. That's crazy because we have a translator, right? And so we'll put those agents, those translation agents, onto exams and summaries, and support all the languages, 19 currently, that we support. By the way, the languages that we support are not tied to our translation, our language packs. I think, in fact, we support a few more languages than they do. So that language pack would change the UI into the language of your choice. This is completely independent of that. So just a word there. All right, next is chat with. I apologize, this was an early mock-up that we did. So you've got the infamous lorem ipsum language in there. But essentially what we're doing with chat with regulations, for instance, is I'm taking the Title 21 of the CFR and saying, okay, I've got a question about that. How many days was it again that I have to start an investigation when I receive a report of some sort of anomaly? Perhaps an injury was reported or something like that. That doesn't happen, fortunately, a lot. And so I'm not really sure was it 10 days or was it 30, or I know those two numbers somehow mean something. What is it? So I can ask about that. The human in the loop here, it's always important to understand that AI can be wrong. And so when we answer the question, we'll always show you the citation or the section from which that answer came. Incidentally, it might be that you go, oh, I didn't actually realize that language there. It makes me have another question. And then you can continue the conversation either by taking one of our suggested questions or continuing the conversation. And of course, over here, you would have a history, which you can delete if you'd like. And basically the history is, it essentially becomes, I don't ask this question a lot, but I do occasionally. And so rather than asking the whole series of questions again, I'm going to maybe save that chat session. So that's one example of chat with. Let me go back a second here. One of the other things too is I can chat with my data. So same thing, rather than chatting with the body of regulatory text, I can chat with my own data and find out what's going on there. So that's chat with. And then our last track was Batch Assessor and Post-Market AI. What are those? Those are new tools. The first one, Batch Assessor, is something that would be in manufacturing and essentially leveraging all sorts of data. Many people we have both quality and manufacturing data. Manufacturing also including production records, logbooks, and equipment tracking, and putting those together and essentially saying, hey, you know what, your current run is deviating somehow from your golden batch, for example, and here's what to do about that. And we would then, of course, have suggestions, preventive and corrective. And then post-market AI is something that will probably be toward the very end of 2025, if not early 2026. And that is of course, the ongoing surveillance of post-market, what's happening with your drug or your medical device. And we'll take essentially what this is trying to depict here is that in the same way that you can chat with regulations or with your own data, et cetera, we'll add that capability along with an agent that assesses risk as well as makes recommendations. So that's those two products. Nicole.
Great, thank you. So yeah, we've got some questions here that have come in, and please feel free to include any other Q&As here as we go through. So first, on current tools, how can we ensure the accuracy of a summary provided by Document Summarizer?
In the summary itself, so Nicole, is there any indication whether it was the change summary or the summary of a single document?
No, there's not.
Okay. We would suggest doing kind of a sample. So if it's a change summary, you should be able to look at the documents and say, as you go down, for instance, and say, okay, it looks like this was added, right? You can go back and verify in the document, in fact, that it was added. But for the summary itself, you can actually see like, okay, it said, in my case, for instance, I added the movie Wizard of Oz that appeared in the summary. can I go down that list of actual changes and verify, for instance, that in fact Wizard of Oz somehow does appear as an addition. In the case of a single summary, again, the same idea, you will need to kind of give it a squint glance, right? Like just look quickly at something there and verify that the concise summary that we gave is in a highlighted section. If you have sections in your document, that'll be really easy because they tend to have headings that can help you there. But again, human in the loop review is necessary. And then I think part of the transparency there of showing you things is that it helps you develop trust with the tool as well. So you could learn two things, right? One, okay, this tool is trustworthy, I'm going to take it. But you know what? When it comes to keywords, it always generates a keyword that's my company name, and that's not useful for me. So I always have to delete that. That's another learned thing that you'll be able to do as well through that human review.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question about existing tools is, are they included in our current MasterControl package, or do we need to purchase additional licenses?
You want to take that one?
Sure. Yes, so for exam generator, document translator, and document summarizer that Renee went through, if your company meets that qualification criteria, so you've got that kind of latest packaging, QX based, standard, or complete, and are on quarterly, those tools do not have an additional fee associated with them. That's not to say that additional tools in the future for AI may have an additional cost, but these three tools available today are available to you to use at no charge.
Great answer.
Thanks. So I got a roadmap question. Will there be a chat with documents function? This would be helpful for people who are unable to perform something like a simple search in MasterControl.
Yes, so yes, we will. The AI team has developed some products on their own, obviously like exam generator, et cetera, to get some stuff out there, and then it later gets integrated. Chat with documents, we believe, will be integrated from the start because it really is integral to search itself. Some of the things that it will be able to do, I mentioned really early in the presentation that one of the things that AI is good at is what's called a semantic search. Basically search for similarity or search for synonyms, that kind of thing. So you will be able to do that. Type in natural language, find the document that covers the invention of Band-Aids. Find the document that tells me right, the SOP, my own, that tells me how often I need to train on this particular machine. Things like that, you'll be able to ask and find the answer. You'll find the document for that. And that's something that today just standard search can't do. We also, speaking of, because I'm bringing it up, mixing and matching translations, for instance, agents, mix and match agents. We have had a request that's a really interesting one, that the guy who asked about this frequently deals with documents that came from an acquisition, and he speaks English, as does his company. That is their language of choice. But this company they acquired was in Japan, and so all of their documents are in Japanese, and he doesn't speak Japanese. So right, that's quite a problem. He wants to be able to type in English, the same thing that I just said, find the document that covers this type of thing, and then we do essentially a search for that those same key findings that we would need to get to in Japanese, and then present, okay, here's the file that meets your criteria that you just asked about. And by the way, we translated it for you into English. So that would be kind of a second step, not the first thing that we come out with, but I give it to you as an illustration of really the power of what these AI agents can do together.
Great. Thank you, Renee. And we are at time. So if we didn't get to your question, we'll follow up and make sure we get that answered for you. But thank you for the engagement, and thank you, Renee, for taking us through current and future AI offerings.
You bet. Thank you everyone for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you.